Discovered. The amazing moment I connected with a mafia boss's mute grandson in sign language. Lucas sat in the back booth of the diner, nursing a cold cup of coffee as he replayed his day in his mind. Teaching science felt like a Sisyphean task, each lesson lost on disengaged students who were more interested in their phones than the wonders of genetics. Hours wrapped in textbooks had given him little to show for it but a growing sense of inadequacy. Maybe I'm not cut out for this, he thought, pushing his empty cup away. It was then he heard the hushed conversation at the next table, catching snippets that sent a chill down his spine. The old mobster, Lucas's grandfather, a figure of fear in our town. For years, Lucas had kept his family name a closely guarded secret. To his students, he was just Mr. Hart, a quiet science teacher with a penchant for making chemical bonds intriguing. Yet someone else in the diner knew his past. Marco, the mute grandson of the infamous mobster, sat alone, his eyes scanning the room as if feeling the weight of the whispers. Lucas's stomach knotted. The notion that his bloodline was linked to a legacy he had spent his life trying to escape felt suffocating. What did that mean for him? The expectations of his family loomed heavily, shadows of ambition against the backdrop of his reality. "You have so much potential," his mother would say earnestly, her dreams for him unfurling like banners he felt unworthy to wave. Yet the pressure to achieve, was it his or theirs? He hesitated, the fear of being defined by his lineage creeping in. Before he could ruminate further, Marco approached him, hands moving with an awkward grace as he formed signs. Lucas didn't know much about sign language, but the curiosity ignited within him. "Hello," Lucas managed to say, half wondering if his voice appeared as nervous as he felt. They stumbled through basic communication, the unrefined interaction charged with an energy that both excited and terrified him. In that cramped booth, the unlikeliest friendship began to bloom. The coffee now tasted stale and bitter alongside the knowledge that connection could fracture at any moment. Lucas was straddling the boundaries of two worlds, one of tailored expectations and the other of an uncharted bond that had formed in a stale diner. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Ignoring the pressing tension wasn't possible.
Lucas felt his heart race just thinking about the inevitable prejudice Marco would face if any whispers got louder. Sure enough, the next morning brought headlines that shook the town. The local paper plastered Marco's identity across the front page, drumming up a frenzy of suspicion. As Lucas walked the school halls, students whispered around him like cicadas at dusk, pointing fingers and hurling judgments. The burden of his family's actions draped heavily on him like an unwelcome cloak. Marcus was no longer just a mute grandson. He was the embodiment of Lucas's worst fears made real. Caught in an emotional tempest, Lucas's loyalty to his family began to clash with an urgent urge to defend Marco. Moments later, as the crowd surged with animosity toward Marco, a boldness blossomed. "He's more than just a last name," Lucas shouted, words tumbling from him in a rush. He could feel the weight of the town's eyes upon him, and for the first time in years, he questioned not just his worth, but the kind of man he wanted to be. Yet doubt lingered in the corners of his mind, fear gnawing at him. What would happen to his career, to his family name? The realization that one choice could forever alter his destiny loomed over him as he inched towards the storm, torn between standing up for the newfound bond and honoring the shadow of the past he had never wanted. The air was thick, charged with uncertainty, and as Lucas took a step forward, he felt the ground shift beneath him, his path irrevocably altered, lingering questions woven tightly into his heart. Lucas's heart raced as he noticed the eyes narrowing around him. The students who once seemed indifferent now murmured with an intensity he had never encountered in his classroom. He clenched his fists, suddenly aware of the weight of expectations crashing down like a heavy storm. The crowd grew restless. Some of his closest friends turned away, unwilling to associate with him in this moment of chaos. What stirred within him was both terror and courage. Lucas never imagined he would find himself defending someone with blood ties to the very legacy he had sought to distance himself from. Yet, as strange as it sounded, in that moment, Marco felt more like family than the lineage Lucas had tried to escape. The connection they formed, however unsteady, offered a sense of belonging that challenged everything he knew about himself. As the crowd pressed in, doubt seeped into his veins. Was this commitment truly his? In a split-second decision, Lucas stepped forward, pressing through the throng toward Marco, who stood frozen under the weight of shock. He saw hurt swallowed in Marco's worried eyes, unable to articulate the multitude of emotions swirling inside him. "Let's go," Lucas said, grabbing Marco's hand with a firm grip, unbothered by the raised eyebrows and gasps echoing behind him.
The rejection and veiled venom from the crowd felt palpable, but they were nothing compared to the unwavering call to action erupting from within. "We don't have to stay here." As they burst outside, breathing in the crisp morning air felt instantly liberating. The cacophony of voices faded into the background, only to be replaced by the quiet thrum of his heart, racing alongside Marco's, have shifting looks of confusion and gratitude. "What did you do that for?" Marco's hand signed shakily, but his expression shifted from disbelief to something warmer, something almost akin to hope. Lucas felt himself break into a smile, realizing that there was no hesitation in his heart when he had defended Marco. It was instinctive. "Because you shouldn't have to face them alone," he replied, unsure how to carry the weight of so much sincerity in that moment. In the safety of a nearby park, they sat benches apart from the world that judged them. The blooming cherry trees above provided a refreshing shade, marking a clear distinction from the chaos they had left behind. Marco turned back to him with a surge of curiosity, his hands signing rapidly, the energy sparked between them revitalizing. An unexpected calm washed over Lucas. This was a moment for realization. He wasn't just a timid science teacher or the grandchild of a mobster. He was a defender, a friend. His thoughts trailed toward the daily lessons he struggled to impart, realizing that the dynamics of communication were more intricate than he had ever taught. Here, in the rawness of this experience, he yearned to connect meaningfully, not just through spoken words, but through actions that bridged their worlds together. "I want to learn," Lucas confessed. "Sign language, I mean. Not just for you. For us. I owe you that much." The proposition felt monumental. He had stepped into a realm of growth he never anticipated but desperately needed. This was a chance to mold himself into someone more than just a label. A flicker of surprise lit Marco's eyes, then a smile spread across his face like sunlight breaking through clouds. The shift in their connection deepened. They were no longer bound by fear, but rather driven by the promise of mutual understanding. However, the lingering question of his own identity echoed louder than ever. Could he hold fast to his chosen path without the shadows of his lineage haunting him? The uncertainty of confronting his family legacy gnawed at him, urging him to act rather than retreat. As they explored the basics of communication, laughter and signs mingling in the air, Lucas felt a tumultuous feeling shift in his heart. He knew this was just the beginning of grappling with who he was, who he wanted to be, and the stories he would tell about himself moving forward. Yet something darker lingered. Whispers of the past threatened to resurface, and Lucas wasn't sure how long the reprieve would last. Therefore, as he locked eyes with Marco, a new determination sparked within him, compelling him to confront more than just his fears. They were on the precipice of a new story, and he needed to understand the shadows of his lineage to forge his path. The key to his journey loomed ahead, but would he dare unlock it? The sensation of growth pulsed through Lucas like a gentle tide, yet remnants of his family's legacy loomed in the back of his mind like dark clouds ready to disrupt the calm. Each sign he practiced with Marco felt like a step away from the weight of expectations. Their first day of learning together was a revelation, transforming an ordinary park into a vibrant classroom sprinkled with laughter and growth. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Lucas focused intently on Marco's nimble hands, each movement telling stories that danced between silence and expression. What had once been an unreachable barrier now became a canvas for self-exploration, allowing Lucas to redefine his approach to communication. For the first time, he felt like a true teacher, not bound by a curriculum, but open to learning and connection. With each sign he enthusiastically attempted, Lucas noticed a flicker in Marco's eyes, a spark of encouragement. It filled Lucas with a buoyant energy, one he hadn't felt in years. He laughed awkwardly as he fumbled through the vocabulary, but the laughter was cathartic, dissolving layers of anxiety that had clung to him for too long. Still, lingering questions cocooned him in a shroud of worry. Would Marco's acceptance endure? What would others think as they learned together? The fear of external judgment was a sneak thief in the night, creeping in when he thought he was safe. These thoughts pricked at him, a reminder that embracing connection came with its own set of burdens. "Why did you really decide to do this?" Marco signed, a serious expression overtaking his previous mirth. Lucas felt a chill run down his spine, the sincerity of the question hanging heavy in the air. Did he dare to divulge his deepest fears and motivations? "Because I realized," Lucas hesitated, choosing his thoughts carefully, "I want to be more than just your teacher. I want to be part of something that really matters." Marco's smile broadened, as though the acknowledgement lifted a weight from his shoulders. It was a sign of approval, but Lucas couldn't shake the sense of vulnerability that swirled around him. That admission was more than a promise to Marco. It was a pledge to himself, a commitment to redefine who he was in ways that aligned with his values. As weeks turned into a rhythm of lessons filled with progress, Lucas experienced a shift in his consciousness. He confronted the roots of his lineage that haunted him. Tales of violence and fear had woven through his identity like a stubborn vine.
He spent sleepless nights going through stories of his ancestors, examining the choices they made, the paths they chose. Despite the affinity he felt toward Marco, shadows from his family's past remained intrusively close. One evening, after a long session of learning, Lucas decided to broach the topic that had been festering within him. "Can we talk about family? It's complicated for me." Marco's eyes widened, a visible encouragement to continue. "I don't want to be defined by my legacy. My grandfather's choices, they haunt me. I just want to be me." His voice trembled with anguish. Marco's fingers curled thoughtfully, their movements deliberate as he signed slowly. "To be you is to love you for who you are, not what they were." The words rang deep, echoing in Lucas's heart. Was that truly the path forward? Accepting his heritage, yet defining his own identity? As the sun set behind the horizon, Lucas made a silent vow. He would confront his past, bringing it into the light while forging his own path. Yet, as he gathered the courage to unpack the legacy he wanted to break free from, a sudden notification buzzed on his phone. The juvenile judgment from the crowd resurfaced, and the fear of confrontation loomed again. This time, it wasn't just about connection. It was about the simmering consequences of his family's decisions that threatened to breach the fragile harmony he had crafted with Marco. Gazing into the night sky, Lucas felt a storm brewing, one that would force him to face not only his family's past, but also those who resented him for making this choice. Would he stand firm when challenged, and could courage truly pave a path to freedom? The moment arrived to confront the ghosts lying in wait, setting the stage for a reckoning he could not evade. Would he rise to the challenge? Morning light filtered through the leaves, illuminating the park where Lucas eagerly awaited Marco for another day of lessons. The gentle breeze carried with it a sense of anticipation, laced with the haunting echoes of doubts that had consumed his thoughts. He couldn't shake the urgency to address the notification that had disrupted his previously budding confidence. It had informed him of a gathering in the community for parents and families, an opportunity to meet and share experiences. And as usual, his mind replayed the worst-case scenarios. What if someone recognized Marco? What if they brought his family history into their conversation? Lucas took a deep breath, trying to anchor himself in the present. He mentally prepped for today's lesson, hoping to finally achieve fluency with a few signs that had eluded him. More than just skilled communication, today felt crucial to solidifying their bond. "Hey, ready?" Marco appeared, his energy palpable. The disarming smile exposed the depths of their fledgling friendship, tightening the fragile thread of trust that linked them. "Absolutely," Lucas responded, words igniting in enthusiasm. As they moved to their usual spot, the weight on Lucas's chest didn't dissipate. Instead, it deepened. Marco began practicing signs for various emotions, demonstrating each with a flair that made them seem like a dance. Lucas followed eagerly, but tripped over himself, laughing it off. "This is harder than it looks," he chuckled, suddenly engulfed with the warmth of camaraderie. Marco signed back, "Every step is a win." Those simple words rekindled Lucas's determination, illuminating the path he had chosen. He reveled in the lessons, each victory, no matter how small, battling the shadows of his past. Still, as they practiced, Lucas couldn't help but let his mind wander back to the gathering. What if he shared the journey he was fostering with Marco? Or would it become another opportunity for the ghosts of judgment to haunt him and Marco? During a break, Lucas's fingers brushed his phone, lingering over the notification as cool dread seeped in. What if he went,
with Marco? What if they were confronted with the glaring judgment he feared? Testing that boundary scared him, but wasn't growth forged through discomfort? "Marco," Lucas began hesitantly, "there's a gathering I think we should attend together." The words spilled from his mouth before he could reconsider. He met Marco's gaze. A quiet intensity sparked between them. "Why do you want to go?" Marco signed, his head tilted slightly, urging Lucas to confront the depths of his hesitation. Lucas posed, his thoughts swirling chaotically. "Because I want to show them who we are, not just who I am or who you are, but what we can achieve together. I don't want to hide anymore." A tight knot of fear tightened around his heart at the overwhelming idea of facing both the community and his own legacy. The silence that stretched felt heavy with unspoken possibilities. Marco's expression softened, understanding passing between them without the need for words. As evening approached, the thought of the gathering crystallized in Lucas's mind. It would be a reflection of his growth, a testing ground for his newfound identity. He resolved to not let fear dictate his actions any longer. This was a moment to carve out, a moment where he might redefine not just his connection to Marco, but also his own understanding of belonging. The day of reckoning loomed, and as he prepared to confront both the judgment of others and the shadows of his lineage, Lucas knew he could no longer turn back. He felt a surge of resolve. Was this the foundation upon which he could build a new legacy? But as the hour approached, a new notification buzzed on his phone, a critical message from a family member, a reminder of the past he desperately wanted to escape. The moment of truth was nearly at hand, yet he felt the storm brewing stronger than before. Would he be able to separate his fear from his courage? Would he stand united with Marco against the tide that wished to pull him back?
With uncertainty prickling his skin, Lucas mused. Was real connection possible when weighed down by ancestral burdens? As the sun sank beneath the horizon, Lucas perched on the edge of his bed, wrestling with his inner turmoil. The message from his family loomed large in his mind, each word striking chords of anxiety deep within. It was a familiar note, echoing the unwelcoming lessons of his past, hinting at failures he desperately wanted to forget. He felt cornered between the remnants of discouragement and the budding courage he had claimed throughout his lessons with Marco. The gathering was only hours away, yet the prospect of walking through that door felt heavier with each passing moment. He grabbed a notebook, intending to write out his thoughts, hoping to shed some clarity from the emotional chaos that twisted inside him. What was it he truly wanted to share? What piece of himself was worth revealing? He started jotting down notes, feelings, fears, goals. Each word turned into a small battle as he sought to articulate the growth he had cultivated. What if Marco shifted the narrative? What if their connection became a testament not just of their individual journeys, but an emblem of resilience against the prejudices that surrounded them? "Are you even ready for this?" he muttered aloud, a thin veil of disbelief coating his voice. His reflection in the mirror caught his eye, the uncertainty evident on his face. Still, a spark of determination glimmered behind his furrowed brow. He wouldn't let the ghosts of his past steal today's chance. A sharp knock at the door jolted him from his reverie. Marco stood there, radiating a warmth that chased away Lucas's inner shadows. "You okay?" he signed, stepping inside and minimizing the physical space that once felt expansive and daunting. "I don't know," Lucas replied truthfully. "What if everything goes wrong?" Marco tilted his head, expressions shifting like seasons. He extended his hand, palm up, encouraging Lucas to take a risk. Lucas felt an electric surge of camaraderie rush through him as their palms met. "What if it doesn't?" Marco signed deliberately, reinforcing the notion that fear was just a choice in that moment. Lucas took a deep breath, the prescient feeling of connection settling inside him. With Marco's reassurance, he gradually began to detach himself from the fears that suffocated his potential. The two left the house, walking side by side in a comfortable silence. With every step, Lucas could sense his confidence crescendoing, like an orchestra tuning before a performance. Their destination loomed ahead, and Lucas's heart raced as they crossed the threshold into the gathering space. A wave of familiar faces flickered in the background, curiosity, comparison, judgment. Moments turned into lifetimes as he scanned the room, his heart pounding like a drum compounding tension. But then he remembered Marco's support, the steps they had taken together, and he kept moving forward.
As they settled into a corner of the gathering, Lucas's throat tightened with anticipation. He wanted to speak. He had something to share that mattered. Yet the crowd's collective gaze became a suffocating weight as he held Marco's hand tightly. "Let's show them," Marco signed, emphasizing the power of presence over fear. With determination taking root within him, Lucas nodded, In that moment, he understood that the fears didn't define him. They merely posed a challenge to be faced. The gathering's noise enveloped them, a chaotic hum amplifying the resolution swelling inside him. They were two forces navigating a world that didn't easily accept their bond. Lucas felt the pull towards his truth, a narrative set to unfold through their shared experiences. Just as he prepared to stand, another notification buzzed in his pocket with an unexpected message. His heart dropped as he read the name of the sender, a powerful figure from his family's past, one known for less than favorable dealings. The weight of that connection began to chip away at his confidence. Was he truly ready to confront this legacy in the light of shared discovery? Or was the past destined to rear its head just when he sought a brighter future? The moment was here, yet the question lingered. Would he allow the tides of his past to drown out the voice of growth echoing within him? The electric buzz of anticipation still resonated in the air, yet Luke felt as if a frigid hand had clamped around his throat. He stared at the phone in disbelief, the name glaring back at him like a specter resurrected from the past. Silence loomed, and amidst the cacophony of voices around him, he felt increasingly isolated. His heart raced. He had spent so long building bridges towards understanding and acceptance, only to find his family's shadow looming larger than ever. Why now? The unwanted memory surged, heated arguments, whispered accusations, attempts to impose a legacy he had fought to escape. This family tie, the one he had worked so hard to redefine, then threatened to undo everything. Lucas, Marco's voice reached him like a lifeline, grounding him in a moment that was slipping through his fingers. What's wrong? Lucas felt the pull to confide in Marco, to share the weight of the past that suddenly felt insurmountable. Would Marco see him differently? Would he understand the venom that dripped from that name? In a frantic moment, he wondered if he was destined to inherit the fears that had bound his family's legacy. I just got a text from someone I thought I was done with, he managed, struggling to keep his voice steady. Marco didn't press him further. Instead, he kept their hands linked, an anchor amidst a storm. Lucas felt the warmth radiating from Marco, and it called upon his core strength, urging him not to surrender that newfound confidence. The gentle pressure of Marco's fingers reminded him of why he was here, facing a crowd that could change the trajectory of his life.
Yet the physical presence of his family's ties, both tugging and weighty, threatened to pull him away from his purpose. He had a story to share, one of courage, change, and companionship. Lucas reminded himself that vulnerability was strength. He reminisced about his practices with Marco, the moments steeped in honesty that opened paths to understanding and personal growth. What good would it do to let the past bleed into the present, especially when he had learned to articulate his truth? Let's give them something to talk about, he signed to Marco, humor lacing his resolve now. A small smile curled at the corners of Marco's lips, signaling understanding and support. With a deep breath, Lucas glanced around the room once more. The faces that observed weren't enemies. They were witnesses, curious minds, and possibly allies. What if, instead of fearing that dark legacy, he turned it into the backdrop of his own narrative? This was an opportunity, a chance to expose the growth and resilience he had nurtured, no matter the origins of his ancestry. In a surge of purpose, he stood up, Marco still by his side. The crowd fell silent, and for a moment he hesitated, caught between the pulsating thrum of anxiety and the simmering resolve that had pushed him this far. This was it, the crossroads. Today isn't just about facing you, he began, feeling each word take flight. It's about reclaiming who I am, breaking cycles that do not serve me, and redefining my own legacy. As he spoke, he felt the chains of expectation begin to shatter, piece by piece. Each word ignited an internal fire that propelled him into the vulnerability he once feared. He sensed Marco's pride radiating beside him, fueling his momentum. Yet suddenly, mid-sentence, Lucas's phone buzzed again, a follow-up message from that figure who threatened to unravel his hard-earned sense of self. The uncertainty snapped back into focus, curiosity and dread entwined. Could he truly distance himself from the past, or was this just the beginning of a confrontation he was ill-prepared to face?
The gathering was but a haze around him, the urgency of reality clawing in the corner of his mind. Standing at the precipice of both revelation and reflection, he realized the stakes were higher than he had anticipated. The question loomed again: would he find fortitude or succumb to fear? As confident as he felt, doubt crept in, whispering that the true battle awaited just beyond this moment. What awaited him on the other side of this declaration? Would he be able to navigate not just today's challenge, but what lay ahead? The soft rustle of the crowd faded, and in that instant, all Lucas could process was the phone in his hand, the vibrating messenger of his past. He quickly glanced to Marco, searching for reassurance. The steadiness in Marco's gaze held him anchored, but uncertainty gnawed at his resolve. The message from that ghost of his family's history read simply, "We need to talk."
It felt like a gauntlet thrown at his feet, another attempt to pull him back into the dynamics he had worked tireless hours to dismantle. He had cautiously pieced together an identity he could claim as wholly his, but this felt like a tether to a past he couldn't trust. Lucas's voice trembled as he pulled the focus back toward the audience, gathering every ounce of confidence he had. He took a moment, eyes scanning the faces looking up at him, expecting him to resume his speech, a beacon of resolve, though doubts rattled inside. What if they sensed his turmoil? What if the idea of liberation was just a facade that would shatter in the presence of familial shadows? Resuming his declaration, he sharpened his focus, darting between empowerment and vulnerability. What happens today is not dictated by the blood that ties me to my past. Today is about the choices I make moving forward. It's about stitching together the fragments of who I am with the love and support I found outside of that legacy. He felt the weight of their expectant stares, probing whether he truly understood the implications of his decision. Each word, initially tentative, became bolder as he pushed against the narrative of his family's legacy, the script they had handed him. With every assertion he made, he realized he was actively erasing their chapter from his story, refusing the hand-me-downs of grief and regret. "Breaking cycles requires strength," he declared, "strength that I've discovered within myself, strength you can all help foster." He noted Marco's smile again, igniting his courage. Did they understand that healing and breaking free could exist in tandem? Not everyone had to learn from pain, they could contribute to the rebuilding. But as the crowd began to react, nods, murmurs of support, an internal storm churned. Was he truly equipped to navigate the familial confrontation looming on the back burner of his mind? He could feel the vibrations of messages streaming in again. This time they felt like the mocking laughter of what he sought to transcend, a reminder that ghosts never truly fade. Desperation clawed him for clarity. Should he confront the sender or fortify the momentum he was building here? Would stepping back into that familial chaos undo what he had set in motion? "Silence is not part of my legacy," he asserted defiantly, before continuing. "I refuse to let it mute my voice any longer." A wave of applause erupted, pushing Lucas toward the climax of emancipation, yet faint whispers of his past lingered like an echo. As he prepared to round off his speech, Lucas felt a piercing weight in his chest, igniting a furious determination, even while the weight of uncertainty threatened to dampen his clarity. He could choose to step back from this decision line he was teetering upon, an ever-present possibility echoing through the air.
Yet, before he could find a conclusion, a familiar sense of dread washed over him, the impulse to check his phone again, unwillingly tethering him to that unresolved tension. As he contemplated the growing swell of support around him, another flash grew in his mind, potent and arresting, the possibility of standing tall against his family's storm instead of backing down. Mythos aside, he had released his truth into the world. The true challenge lay ahead, facing what waited in the shadow. Would the choices he made now ripple through his family dynamics, reclaiming his legacy, or would they drown him beneath the weight of their expectations? One question became paramount as he took a breath, preparing to respond to the unfolding reality. Was he ready to uncover the truth behind that simple message? The moment the applause subsided and the murmurs of affirmation faded into the background, Lucas felt suspended in time. The echoes of his own declaration hung thick in the air, intertwining with the relentless vibrations of his phone. He faced a stark choice. The warmth from the crowd began to cool, replaced by an icy grip of confrontation awaiting him. His heart raced as he weighed the implications of diving back into the chaos of his family. What lay beneath the surface of that simple message?
The fear of the unknown clawed at his psyche. The prospect of being thrust back into the fractious fold of expectation felt like standing at the edge of a precipice, muscles taut and poised to either leap or retreat. Lucas's breath quickened as he turned to Marco, his silent ally standing proudly at the periphery of the stage. Those unwavering eyes seemed to offer him a lifeline, yet the seething dread coiled within him refused to be dismissed. "I can't just abandon what I've started," he murmured to himself, wrestling with the gravity of his thoughts. Today he had presented a vision for himself, an ascendance through his own voice, yet the clutches of family loyalty loomed ominously. He forced himself to analyze the message and what it represented. Confrontation promised clarity, but clarity came at a cost. Would he still emerge intact after facing the ones who had dictated his past? The implications felt like a storm 12 miles off, brewing and unseen. With each passing moment, Lucas felt the walls closing in, his mind racing through scenarios. A confrontation could offer resolution, but it could also lead to the very entrapment he had struggled to escape. He remembered the cyclical patterns he had studied, parallels of manipulation and control that had destroyed so many lives around him. Was he truly prepared to wade back into those muddy waters? He felt a push build within him as he fled from the memory of an imposed legacy. No, he wouldn't approach it as a frightened child looking for approval.
Instead, he would stand as the architect of his own narrative, equipped with the tools he had painstakingly gathered along this journey: self-awareness, courage, and conviction. But did those tools extend to unraveling familial bonds? With a brief glance to the crowd, he visualized their expectant faces turning into reflections, each one capturing fragments of his own struggle. They believed he could withstand the tempest and emerge unscathed. Yet deeper beneath the hesitance lay an uncharted fear, fear of failing them, or worse yet, himself. The snickers of his past echoed in the recesses of his mind, pleading with him to reconsider, to avoid the confrontation, to stay hidden behind the guise of security he had painstakingly crafted. "Lucas," Marco's voice broke through his whirlpool of thoughts, tender yet firm. "You have already transcended so much. You can do this. Find your truth." The simple words reached into the heart of his turmoil, reminding him that his development didn't only linger in the light of his recent transformation. It also required grappling with his lineage and confronting the legacy that pursued him. He straightened his shoulders, feeling a spark ignite. With every pulse of his heart, he recognized that this new chapter didn't mean bowing to his bloodline, but rather redefining its hold on him. It was less about breaking free and more about claiming what had been unjustly wrested from him, his own narrative. As he stepped down from the podium, he realized he needed to face the sender of that message. Each step toward potential confrontation ignited in him a growing fortitude. The conflict would soar in intensity, and as he stepped outside, the conversation simmering ahead would either cement his freedom or entrap him deep within familial ties. Determined, he reached for his phone, ready to respond. Would he reclaim the narrative of his legacy, or merely dance to the tune of those who wished to bind him? The moment loomed before him. The time had come to face the truth behind the daunting message. Was he prepared for what lay on the other side? Moments after he stepped outside, Lucas stood beneath the stark azure sky, the noise from the crowd now just a distant hum in his ears. The sun above shone mercilessly, illuminating not just the landscape, but the raw tension that knotted his stomach. He could feel the weight of his decision pressing heavily upon him as he thumbed through his messages, searching for the one that threatened to plunge him back into his turbulent family dynamics. His fingers hovered over the screen, shaking ever so slightly. What would he say? What words could encapsulate the maelstrom of emotions swirling within him? Each second felt like an eternity as his thoughts spiraled around the implications of his response, how this moment would shape him. A small voice whispered doubt, telling him to pack out, to ignore the message and pursue clarity at a safer distance.
But then he recalled Marco's words, the unwavering support that spun a thread of courage through his veins. This wasn't merely about family ties. It was a test, a crucial juncture that required him to manifest his newfound strength. If he truly believed in claiming his own narrative, then he had to step boldly into the fray, no longer just a passive vessel caught in the currents of others' expectations. He typed quickly, each word infused with purpose, expressing his intent to meet. There was no room for ambiguity. This was a pact,
a proclamation that he would no longer be a shadow in someone else's story. Hitting send, a visceral thrill coursed through him. The die was cast. Minutes passed as he anxiously awaited a response, the familiar tremors of doubt threatening to return. Just as he began second-guessing his decision, his phone pinged, jolting him back into the moment. The reply was cryptic but cohesive, a time and a place, a small cafe tucked away in a corner of the bustling city. He noted the details with a sense of finality, like a soldier preparing for battle. As Lucas made his way to the cafe, he meticulously examined every emotion that washed over him. The excitement mingled with trepidation, the hope overshadowed by lingering fear. With each step, his thoughts returned to his family's history, the intricate threads of their narratives entwined with bitter conflicts and harsh expectations. He entered the cafe, greeted by familiar sounds, the hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of patrons lost in their own worlds. But Lucas was hyper-aware, scanning the room not for comfort, but for the source of the storm he was about to confront. His heart thudded in his chest as he spotted a figure sitting alone in the far corner, a patch of shadows amidst the light, the embodiment of the looming confrontation. There he was, the enigmatic sender of the message, and suddenly Lucas was struck by the gravity of what he was undertaking. Each stride toward that corner table felt monumental, laden with unresolved tension and questions that surged beneath the surface like a restless tide. What secrets would be revealed? What shameful truths lay in waiting? As he approached, he noticed intricate tattoos winding around the man's forearms, hints of a life lived in silence but not in absence, a mute grandson of a legacy etched in power and secrecy. Lucas steeled himself, aware he was not just facing a family member, but a mirror reflecting everything he had tried to escape. Sitting down opposite the man, Lucas struggled to maintain eye contact, his thoughts a chaotic puzzle of intent, confrontation, discovery, liberation. The air thickened with unspoken tension, and he found himself engulfed in an electric moment, one that would either tether him back to his oppressive past or free him into an uncertain yet potentially enlightening future. "Why did you reach out?"
Lucas finally asked, his voice steadying as he prepared to unravel the carefully woven narratives that had held him captive for too long. Now was the moment to confront the truths layered beneath silence, to unearth the origins of his fears, and ultimately, to reclaim the power he had fought so hard to seize. The conversation ahead shimmered with chaotic potential, a myriad of outcomes swirling in its wake. Would it cement his growth, or plunge him deeper into the abyss? The next words spoken would mark a fragile threshold that Lucas was both desperate and determined to cross. With the air thick with anticipation, Lucas sat across from the embodiment of his past, the very legacy he had fought to escape. The man, his uncle, bore the scars of choices steeped in the underbelly of familial pride, a man who had held sway over Lucas's destiny through a lineage steeped in fear and control. "Why did you reach out?" Lucas's voice cut through the thick atmosphere like a sharp knife, steady yet heavy with meaning. He was ready to confront the roots of the anxiety that coiled within him, ready to reclaim his voice and assert his worth beyond the inheritance of his family's dark history. His uncle leaned back slightly, an inscrutable expression crossing his face. "Because your family," he replied, his tone laden with layers of unspoken history. "And you've forgotten where you come from." The words hung in the air like a war cry, challenging Lucas to either succumb to the weight of expectation or rise to meet them with unapologetic courage. "Forgotten?" Lucas felt the heat rise within him, a blaze igniting. "For years I've fought against the shadows of your choices, against the stigma of our name. You think you can just waltz back into my life and remind me of where I come from? I'm reclaiming my own story." His conviction shook the table, roots of confidence pushing through the fear that had threatened to drown him for so long. His uncle regarded him with an intensity that reflected both surprise and a grudging admiration. "You think it's that simple? You never really left. The past clings to you, no matter how far you run." "No, it doesn't." Lucas rose to the challenge, each word resonant with a strength awakened through his experiences with Marco. "I choose to acknowledge it, yes, but I refuse to let it define me. All those lessons I've learned, every hesitation I've put aside, they're forming a new legacy, one that isn't shackled by fear. It's one built on honesty and connection." The older man's eyes softened momentarily. It was a moment of vulnerability flashing across a hardened visage, the acknowledgement of a connection that surpassed blood, but remained intricately laced with the fear of the past. "Your grandfather, he had dreams for this family,
he said, frustration mingling with a hint of regret. Ambitions meant to secure our legacy, but all these years have only drained us.
Those dreams created a legacy of oppression, Lucas countered, feeling his heart swell with conviction. I will not be a product of your ambitions. I am shaping a new narrative, built on the power of understanding, compassion, and friendship, one of meaning, not command. Each word brought clarity, resonating with a newfound strength that solidified within him. The confrontation had become less about his uncle and more about Lucas reclaiming his foundation, firmly root-bound in authenticity. The change he sought was not an affront to his lineage, but rather the blossoming of a new path forged through conscious choice. For the first time, his uncle seemed to genuinely contemplate Lucas's trajectory. This path you're carving, it's fraught with challenges. There are shadows you have yet to navigate. Then I'll navigate them, Lucas declared, his spirit unshakable. But I'll do it on my terms. I've already begun with Marco, learning sign language, sharing experiences. For every lesson I absorbed, I'm weaving a legacy of my own. Lucas took a breath, knowing the true weight of his next words. I don't want that legacy to include you, if it means conforming to expectations. I choose connection over the shackles of fear. In that moment, Lucas witnessed a shift in his uncle's demeanor. The hardened exterior cracked, revealing a glint of understanding, a glimmer of hope between the boundaries of their connection, forged on the anvil of difference. If you proceed down this path, if you bring Marco into our world, he warned, you risk the judgment of our family. The past has a long reach. People won't let you forget where you came from. Let them judge, Lucas said decisively. I'm breaking from the mold. I'm going to show them who I am, and that this new identity can be born from our connection without perpetuating the pain. I've realized my worth, and I'm no longer going to hide who I am or the people I choose to stand with. The tension shifted. Lucas felt invigorated by the pledge he had made. The air around them transformed, charged with the potential of newfound understanding. He felt unwavering clarity, his essence now forged in recognition of his worth. Maybe it's time we both understood that not all legacies are shackles, his uncle replied, a crack of admiration echoing in his tone. Perhaps you're right. The past doesn't have to determine the future. With every word exchanged, the path to reconciliation between them began to stir. But for Lucas, it was complete. He knew he could navigate this world with unprecedented strength, holding on to the growth he had forged, of which Marco had been a crucial part. Lucas was finally free, not just from the weight of his family's past, but stepping confidently into the identity he had claimed as his own. Leaving the cafe, Lucas felt lighter, empowered by his resolution. He enriched the fabric of his identity with newfound purpose and clarity.
He vowed to embrace the future with conviction, prepared to dismantle the ghost that threatened his joy, and to elevate the legacy he now chose to create. In sharing his journey and connecting with Marco, Lucas had forged a narrative of courage and empowerment that would resonate far beyond his family, a testament to the magnum opus of identity crafted against all odds. With every thought and every sign, he had not only conquered his past, but also established himself as a beacon of change amid the shadows that once sought to define him. And now, as he strode confidently into the future, he knew one truth resounded. What lay ahead was rooted in possibility and anchored in choice. As you wrap up this experience, do not forget to support this channel that brings these powerful stories to life. You need to subscribe now to stay connected for more emotional transformations. Leave a like now to amplify our message and feed the algorithm that keeps us thriving. Comment below with your insights and theories about Lucas's journey, and share instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion today. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to spread the inspiration.